What is up, survivors? This is Harvard Harvest Corner. We're coming at you with another 101 Wednesday, and we're just going to do a top 5 flyers on this one. And obviously, we have to preface all this with these are the 5 flyers that I like the best out of playing a lot of Ark, and why I like them, to give you a little bit of a heads up ahead of time. The reason why I picked some of these guys: one, because they're versatile, a little bit more versatile than you might think on the front side, and we'll talk about the little abilities if you're not sure about what they actually do. And secondly, I like something, I look for mobility, I look for the usefulness, and I look for the little niches that help me out here. So there's plenty of flyers that I'm sure people are going to say, hey, why wasn't this one on the list? But yeah, it's my list, you get over it. Anyway, moving real quick into it. So we're going to do 5, starting with number 5. There's this little guy over here, Pelegnormos. So the Pelegnormos is a pretty early tame. Most people know that. It's a pretty early tame, and it's usually see this guy right around the beaches. Same place you would typically see pteranodons sometimes. They're not much to look at. I really think these guys could get a TLC. I think personally, I think it'd be pretty nice if they got a TLC. So there's a couple of disadvantages to it. Obviously, it's a starter flyer, so the stats aren't that great. And we could look at them real quick. This is just a level 1, and this is what you're going to see. The weight is stamina is health is, kind of comparable to a pteranodon, really. Really, it's not too much different from a pteranodon. One of the backfalls to this is that it will only eat fish meat, but it does an incredible amount of damage against fish, so that part really doesn't matter. But the other part that I really like, he just swims around in the water whenever I want. That's what I like about this the best. The idea that I can use this as a way of getting my stamina back. So if I come down here and not sprint and just kind of meander across the water, I can get my stamina back. So this means on any map with water incorporated, I now have landing points where I can land, still move, be reasonably safe, get my stamina back, and then go back out again. The speed isn't great on these guys. It's really not. It's not too bad. It's not too much different from a pteranodon, really, I don't think. But it's not perfect either, obviously. There's definitely other flyers that are going to outfly these guys. But what I like is the ability to be able to land on water, stop when I need to, and yeah. Also, if you need fish meat, this thing is incredibly good at catching fish and eating fish. Any fish that are like reasonably, of course, there's like not one right here for me to eat it to show you, because that would make way too much sense. But it does an incredible amount of damage to normal fish and will usually kill them in one hit. So you usually just drop a fish like right out and just kill it in one hit and not have to worry about it ever again. So getting fish meat with this guy and keeping it alive to do that is fairly easy to do. Knocking them out can be kind of tricky because they like to fly over water like this, so you really got to catch them when they're not. And then they're not fighters, they're not haulers, they're really not meant for anything like that. They're kind of a early-ish tame, but they're actually pretty useful. So again, we have the option to land in the water like this, which is pretty cool. You can also fish off of these guys, so now you have a mobile fishing platform that you can do that from. This thing is also good at harvesting organic polymer from penguins. It's actually one of the highest rating gatherers for organic polymer, making this guy fairly versatile, at least more versatile than you might originally think. That's really why the Pelegnormos comes in at number 5 for me. I know a lot of people for beginner birds are going to say pteranodon, and in a lot of ways I agree with you. But there's just something about the Pelegnormos. Maybe it's because it's not quite as commonly used. Maybe that's why I like it so much. But the ability to travel on the water like this is incredible. And leveling up its oxygen stat, at least from my experience, seems to be able to actually speed the water travel time up a little bit too. So all in all, I think this is an incredibly useful creature that I think is a lot of times overlooked. Let's be honest, it's not winning any beauty pageants, so I can totally understand why. As far as appeal goes, I think the Pteranodon definitely looks a whole lot better. But really, that's it. That's number 5 for me. That's the Pelegnormos. We're going to go look at number 4. All right, looking at number 4. Number 4 is the Azshara. So this guy he can kind of be a hard tame to find at times, depending on where you're at. You usually find him around jungles, around, jungly sort of biomes. Super common in the Extinction Sanctuary biome, in that green biome. But outside of that, he's not terribly easy to find in a lot of cases, but it's a very interesting thing that I've always really liked. More so for its controls more than anything. I really like the versatility of this guy, the ability to fly backwards and forwards and strafe side to side. This is more where a lot of flyers in this game operate more like aircraft. I think The Azshara works more like a helicopter. But I like the agility. I like the ability to kind of strafe around. I think the mobility and the agility of this guy is pretty incredible. He's not incredibly good at carrying a lot of things, but he's not too bad either. I mean, this is a level 1 with 280 carry weight. That's not terribly bad. And it's fairly decent on stamina for what it does too. It's not really a fighter, but it can definitely still hold its own against, small little critters. And it's pretty fast too, so it can get you out of things pretty quick too. It does have a couple of different abilities, and I like all of them. So first and foremost, I think most people know this, is the crazy ability that I'm doing right here, where I can just kind of grip to the edge of a wall, which is pretty nifty, combined with the fact that this saddle that you're looking at is a 3-person saddle. The driver mounts on the middle, and you have a passenger in the front, passenger in the back. So a Azshara with a decent amount of weight and maybe some stamina can be an excellent mobile taming mount, and also a pretty good hunting mount too. Being able to have 2 people on here with any sort of firearms or anything really makes it pretty effective. Azshara comes in at number 4 for me. I love these guys. I love the way they look. I love their sculpts. I love that you usually see them in these bright, crazy colors, and they just look so gnarly to me. I don't know. I've always been a fan of these guys ever since I started playing Ark years and years and years ago, and they are still there today. Top it off with the fact that you can put a tech saddle on these guys and shoot lasers. I feel like that's a winner in just about anybody's book. But anyhow, Azshara comes in at number 4 for me. Drawbacks would be he's still not a fighter. He definitely has the same problems that the Pelegnormos would have as far as really taking on, you're not going to take on anything big with these guys. You're just not. Small critters, sure, but anything big, you're not going to do that. Carry weight's not that great, and it's not really going to be able to pick up anything incredibly heavy. This is not going to happen. The pros, obviously, the 3-person saddle, the ability to climb on the rocks, and fairly decent stats as far as flyer is concerned, make the Azshara for me number 4. So we're going to land this guy over here and go talk about number 3. I feel like this guy was on our list before, the Argentavis. He definitely was on our last top 5, I believe, but for multiple reasons, and he's on this list for the same amount of reasons, pretty much for the same exact reasons. The Argies are tanks, man. They're just tanks. Are they the fastest? No, they are definitely not the fastest. Are they agile? They're not too bad for what they are. They're really not that bad. When compared to something like the Pteranodon or the Azshara, no, it's not agile. You'll lose a little bit of the grace, the mobility, the agility of those, and you get more stopping power and carry weight. This is more of a workhorse style flyer than a scouting type flyer that what we've seen in the last 2 slots. Now, the RG has a whole lot of awesome abilities. First and foremost, its carry weight is pretty awesome. This is just a level 1, 400 carry weight. That's pretty awesome. And the health isn't too bad either. Some other cool things about these is they can harvest from dead corpses. So if you kill something with this and eat the corpse of whatever's left behind, it will give you a health boost. He'll start to regain his health back. His melee damage is pretty good off the bat. It's not too hard to get some RGs that can really take some big stuff out. I wouldn't go flying these after a Giga, but I have been able to breed RGs that will pretty much run through just about anything else if you do it the right way. High level RGs can be quite useful. They also get a huge weight reduction on so many things. If you watched the last video, you probably saw, and you probably already know what I'm about to tell you, but they get a 50% weight reduction on black pearl, crystal, metal ingot, obsidian, organic polymer, regular polymer, and also stone, making these guys really awesome as far as a workhorse hauler goes. And combine that with the fact that they're a mobile smithy as well. They can carry things in their beak and also in their talons, making this guy pretty useful for that. And they can carry a lot of critters. Even ones that you might think might be a little bit too heavy, these guys can actually pick these up and carry them. The Argentavis, again, is probably one of the biggest workhorse flyers involved in the Ark universe. I think anybody trying to make their life easier in Ark with flyers is going to find an Argentavis. It's going to make defending yourself in the air a lot easier. It's going to make hauling resources easier. It's going to make just a lot of things easier. Taming them isn't too terribly difficult either if you do it right, but the Argentavis definitely comes in at number 3, as it should. And yeah, so let's move into number 2. Number 2 comes in as the Snow Owl. This guy debuted on Extinction, and they're adorable yet really cool and wild looking at the same time. I love these guys. Snow Owls are really fun, and that's one of the many reasons why they come in at number 2. Similar to an RG as far as size goes, but they're a little bit smaller. Their turning radius is better, and they get this cool little swoop ability that enables you to pick up speed. And you can also use that to drop down on the ground and dive bomb people, do ice damage to them as well, potentially freezing other things. So what we have is kind of an RG size with more mobility. You saw, I mean, the turning radius on this is incredibly better. Now the speed might be comparable to an RG, but once I start using this momentum of this glide, I can start covering distances a lot quicker, a lot easier, and yeah, I dig it. But that's not all the abilities this thing has. So it does, instead of it drops owl pellets, right? And it seems a little weird at first. Most people probably already know this has been out for a little while, but these owl pellets can be used to feed the gotchas to in turn get better things when the gotchas drop the crystals, which is pretty awesome. That alone, chalk it up with the fact that they're absolutely adorable, means, yeah, they're pretty cool. The dive bomb attack is pretty awesome, and then the ability to kind of use that dive as a momentum to kind of pick you up and carry you farther away is pretty awesome too, making these guys considerably pretty fast for what they are. Their stats are not that bad. You're not getting the carry weight of an RG, but you're getting pretty close. This is a level 1, and the health is pretty much the same. Damage wise, it's not too terribly different, but what you really get out of the damage is the dive bomb ability. So these guys could be haulers, but the trick to remember is they don't get the weight reductions on things that the Argentavis does. And one added awesome little effect, your third attack, which is C, your C attack on the keyboard, is now this Predator infrared vision, this heat vision, which is pretty awesome. Depending on where you're at, it makes seeing things a lot easier. This makes night flying a bit safer, depending on where you're at. You can kind of see things coming at you from a mile away. Snow Owl's pretty useful in a lot of different reasons. So what we really get out of this guy is a decent weight, so you can haul things, a decent melee to be able to fight things, some cool added abilities to make it agile, to speed the flight up, and to also make flying a little bit safer so you can see what to engage and what not to engage. But we're not done yet. I can freeze myself. So this actual attack, it's not really an attack, it's a secondary attack, but yeah. It actually freezes the Snow Owl and anything nearby. It will heal you. It will heal you exponentially better than the Daeodon does, actually. It's incredibly good at it. It will heal you and any other friendly animals that you have nearby, making this guy pretty useful even if you're not flying him around. The owl pellets for the gotchas and the ability to heal damaged dinos, making things like breeding dinos and leveling up health, or going into a boss fight and coming out of it and needing to heal your dinos up. The Snow Owl is pretty useful for that. All in all, this guy's pretty incredible. I really like him. Yeah, and he makes really loud noises, but he loses a lot of feathers when I do that. I don't know how you keep all your feathers, man. That'd be a horrible mechanic, right? If I kept doing this and I had a bald Snow Owl, that would feel horrible. Anywho, Snow Owl comes in at number 2. We're gonna get right down to the number 1, and yeah, let's do it. All right, guys, number 1. If you've noticed a trend here, we didn't see any of the bigger stuff, and sorry, but we're not going to. Number 1 for me is definitely the Griffon still. Now, before we go further into the Griffon, I would put some caveats on here. I love Pelegnormos. I love rock drakes. I love the Bloodstalkers, but they're not actually flyers, and that's the reason why those 3 definitely aren't on the list. I'd love the third, as far as being able to flip through the air, as far as fast in the air stuff goes. Sure, the Bloodstalker, the rock drake, the Pelegnormos, even the gas bag are technically really, really good at those things, but I'm going traditional things with wings, and there's a couple things that weren't on the list for different reasons, but again, this is just my personal preference. The Griffon has a lot of different abilities, and we're going to talk about all of them. So right off the bat, it is a 2-seater, and it does not require a saddle, so you can have 2 people on it, and you don't need a saddle to actually ride it, which means you can tame, in theory, one of these at any level. It doesn't really matter because you don't need a saddle for it, which makes that pretty awesome. It has the same dive bomb attack we talked about with the snow owl. So what we do is we get up a little bit higher here. Now it doesn't do like the ice damage, but if you dive straight down, it does immense damage to the things below you. But the trick is to use the dive bomb to actually speed your flight up, making the flight pattern, the flight movement speed considerably faster than one might think. And again, you can use that dive bomb to kind of come down to the ground. I'm out of stamina. That's why I'm doing this. I'm a level 1. Can't expect too much from this guy. One of the backfalls to this guy is he is kind of a glass cannon. He can dish it out, but he can't take it too terribly much. That's kind of the backfall of not being able to have a saddle, and that's something that plagues the wyverns as well. Not needing a saddle means one less thing you need to craft, and you don't need to be a certain level. But the problem with that is that any damage you take is just straight damage. You're not going to negate any of it because you don't have a saddle to do that with. So that part can be kind of annoying and a little bit of a pain, but one of the many reasons why I like the Griffons over the wyverns is the ability to shoot from the back of this. So me, as the driver, I can shoot from the back of it, and so can the passenger that sits behind me. So this kind of works like the Azshara, where now I have a mobile taming mount, now I have an air-to-air mount. I can do a couple of different things with this guy. He's definitely versatile. He's pretty fast. He's kind of, I wouldn't say he excels in anything with the exception of speed with the dive bomb ability, but to check his stats out, the weight's 280 on a level 1, which isn't really that bad. It's not it's not Argentavis weight, but it's not like Pelegnormos weight either. So it's somewhere in the middle. You're not going to be hauling resources with this guy. This is really kind of a get to point A to point B to fight stuff sort of guy, or even to go out and tame some stuff. The health looks low, but again, this is a level 1. And again, this is more of a finesse mobility flyer, and I'm sure you're probably noticing a trend with that, and that's really what I look for when I look for flyers. I look for something that's not huge, that's not slow. I want something decent, and I want something with a decent speed, and the Griffon definitely provides all of those things for me. One of the other drawbacks to these guys is that you can't breed them. Everything else that we talked about in here we can breed, but we can't breed the Griffons, which are a bummer. Now there are certain mods you can use to change that so that you can breed them, but typically with vanilla settings you can't breed them, which is kind of a bummer. But also I don't know, sometimes I feel like that's probably the way it should be with Ark. You know, we have some of those creatures that we can't breed because if we could and we could super mutate them, you could make some pretty obnoxious stuff. But all in all, I love the Griffon. I love the abilities that it has. I've loved it since it came out, and I usually try to come to them whenever I can. Now again, also, I mean, obviously, I would love to put something like Rock Drake's Pelegnormos, and definitely the Bloodstalker. I don't think I could ever stop using the freaking Bloodstalker. I love that guy. But they're not really traditional flyers, so I really wanted to stick with traditional flyers. I know a lot of people love wyverns, and I get it. They look great, but I don't know. I just can't do it. It's just huge, and they take up a lot of space, and I don't know, I can't. And the Quetzal, thanks to that flyer nerf, that it's so painful to fly something like that. Anywho, I'm getting off the rails, I'm getting off subject, but the Griffon comes in at number 1, and that's really why. Yeah, flyers are important in this game. You probably want flyers, you probably need flyers all the time, every time. I usually play in either solo or a small tribe, so I tend to stick towards the smaller creatures unless I'm doing something for a boss fight. Then I'm sure, let's go find something big. But yeah, I love the Griffon. He's awesome. Or she. I think it's just it, really. I don't think they have genders. Do they have genders? No, they totally don't have genders. No gender. Gender NA. That's how they rolls. They roll. It rolls. The Griffon rolls. Whatever. Anyway, guys, that's it. That's really it. It's quick and simple, kind of the top 5 flyers that I like to use. Now, this is just my opinion. Take these things with a grain of salt. Feel free to tell me that I'm wrong. That's okay. It's just my opinion. That's all it is. And there's definitely, like I said, there's definitely reasons why I picked certain ones and that I didn't pick other ones. I talked about the wyvern situation, why I don't really care for wyverns too much. I'm not really into the Quetzals because if you're running certain mods, obviously, I think this list would change for me if I was running certain mods, obviously. Something like the classic flyer mod, then yes, I would probably put Quetzals on the list because then I can improve their speed and they are actually pretty awesome and pretty useful for that. Pteranodons are good too. They're a good fast scout, but I like the fact that the Pelegnormos is just, I don't know, it seems a little underrated, so I wanted to sneak the Pelegnormos in there. But there are a few others, obviously, like the Lymantria from the Scorched Earth when it came out. And the Lymantria, that's a sticky one. Like with certain mods, the Lymantria can be absolutely amazing, but vanilla Lymantrias, unfortunately, are not that great. Yeah, they're the Pteranodons of Scorched Earth. You get them long enough to get something else, and then you probably don't use it again if you're using vanilla settings. But yeah, there's a few others too. But anyway, that's my list. That's my top 5. That's all I got. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for watching. Tune in on Friday. We're going to be doing episode 3 of our Ark playthrough now that we're getting back on track with things. Thanks for hanging out. Until next time.